America's oldest law school says XRP holders have bought a slice of Ripple's future cash flow. So instead of calling XRP a stock, it functions more like a bond. And we're going to be going more into this article that was written by Sam Wisdom Raphael. So, a legal analysis from William and Mary Law School. So, this is a professor. The older existing law school in the United States suggests XRP buyers procured a slice of Ripple's future cash flow. Now, I have heard this thing called a stock, but I've never heard it called a bond. And if we are thinking less emotionally, I might be seeing what this guy's talking about, but we're going to go through it. It says the report, authored by University of Texas law professor James C. Spindler and published in May 2025, asserts that XRP buyers essentially acquired an economic interest in Ripple's future revenue streams. However, it also suggests a legal gray area that complicates the situation. SMQKE, a independent crypto researcher, first brought the academic report to public attention in a post on XRP. I was about to say XRP. You can tell I just woke up. Triggering discussion within the XRP community. XRP holders have bought a slice of Ripple's future cash flow. The report argues that XRP, while not conferring legal ownership or entitlements like dividends or voting rights, still functions like a vehicle for sharing in Ripple's future business success. Now, these are, not reading, I'm speaking as myself right now. You see this little, this little snippet right here. If it functions, you could say more like a bond. And the thing is that there is a small way that while we don't want to acknowledge it, it could be seen that way. But in one way, it is like grasping for straws by enemies of XRP. Now, as a XRP maxi myself, I will say maxi, but I will say that I have one or two. I have one other crypto that I put money into, and then I got some Flare from the airdrop. But that was pretty much it. And got some Pi tokens that I can't get that I can't offload. But apart from that, my main holding is XRP. I want XRP to moon to 5 figures, 6 figures, and I wanted to do so as soon as humanly possible. And so, but even when I read this, I do have to ask XRP holders, how do you react whenever Ripple as a company does something? The thing is that if we are staying calm and we're making acknowledgments that Ripple is still controlling XRP, just like how a company can control its stock to an extent, where, if people don't gobble up the XRP, they end up locking some of it back in its own escrow. Now, what do you know where if something's decentralized, how can you be decentralized and yet control the behavior of something? It is controlling the price. We got to acknowledge that. And every time Ripple makes another partnership or they have another meeting, the XRP community does in fact go crazy. They go ballistic with, speculation. So, you want Ripple to succeed to the extent that it makes XRP succeed. And I think that Ripple, I think that they won the major parts of the lawsuit, and that was a good thing. But there's a few spots where they should have lost. If you are controlling the outflow and distribution of something, regardless of your reasoning, that's not decentralization. So, anyway, let's move on. It suggests that investors are seen as betting on Ripple's long-term profitability, specifically revenue from its blockchain-based transaction settlement system when they purchase XRP. Again, if XRP is going to be the basis of their system, if RLUSD, I heard a rumor on YouTube that RLUSD has an underlying functionality with XRP, where really RLUSD is really just a stablecoin version of XRP in the first place. That is indeed, when we purchase XRP, that is indeed betting on any system, no matter what you do. The Bearable Bull used to talk about this all the time. That is betting on XRP being used to not just as an instrument for settlement, but that's also expecting Ripple to do the work in exchange for the money. And it really does seem that way sometimes. And people get up in arms about this when in reality, let's take XRP out of the equation. All right, let's play the name game for a second. Let's play the name game. And by the way, if you hear birds chirping or if you hear cars in the background, my neighbors are getting ready to go to work, and I'm enjoying the morning sunrise. So anyway, so let's play the name game. Let's swap out XRP and let's say the doggy coin, Doge, right? Let's say Doge, and whoever created Doge was controlling the outflow of the Dogecoin. And let's say that Doge had created the amount of coins it did, let's say it created half of its ever existing supply and releases a little bit of it on the month in an attempt to control the price. This is something that's well known with XRP holders. That's not up for debate that Ripple does put out $1 billion a month, but most XRP holders do not acknowledge that if Ripple does not like where the price stands, it claws back some of it. So essentially, to an extent, it functions like an Indian giver. Anyway, so if Doggy Coin was distributed piece by piece every month, and if I don't like where that price stands, if I claw back 90%, would you then say that I'm controlling Doggy Coin? Yes, you would. All right, swap out Doggy Coin, let's say Ethereum. If I was controlling gas prices, would I not be controlling Ethereum? In a way, I would be controlling Ethereum. And so on and so on. If I don't like where the price is, could I not control? I mean, Ethereum is more of a weak argument. I do admit that, because it works differently than XRP does. But I will say that if I'm controlling things because I don't like where the price is at, that is centralization. It's the same exact concept, as even though it's a different way of getting to it. It's like in a circle. If you're running a circuit race, and the usual path of the circuit is counterclockwise, all Ripple really did, to an extent, if we're being big boys here, is all they did was run clockwise instead of counterclockwise around the circular track. They still ended up running a circle. So, and that's not a play on the whole USDC stablecoin situation. All right, so it says the report argued that XRP's value hinges on the success of Ripple's infrastructure. Again, if we're being big boys, that is true. It says Ripple's fortunes. Ripple, in turn, I'm reading this. It looks like it's from a book or something. It says Ripple, in turn, funds its activities through distributions of XRP tokens. Yes, they do. In return for both investment capital and labor. Again, is Ripple working on expanding their infrastructure? Yes, they are. At the end of the day, XRP purchasers have bought, effectively, a slice of the future cash flows that Ripple would make from the licensing of its transaction settlement system. End quote. Now, this is from this little, it looks like it's from a book. So they say things that are inconvenient for XRP holders to say out loud, because now Ripple is going to be in another lawsuit with the state of Oregon, as far as I heard, unless they drop the lawsuit. And Annalisa Torres isn't really too happy with them either for wasting her time for 5 years. And I'm a bit mad at that myself because I came into XRP in 2019, and I'm still waiting. And this is it's gotten ridiculous for me to be seeing a lot of the XRP channels, and some of which they're just AI driven, and they're just saying a bunch of things. They're making they're making all sorts of claims that were never that are not substantiated inside their videos. They just go over charts in the video while making unsubstantiated claims, and somehow they get viewership. And there's other people that are not AI. I won't name names or anything, but they do the same exact thing. There's one person, one particular dishonest bastard that said Edward Snowden said this about XRP. I went through the video. Edward Snowden didn't say a damn thing about cryptocurrency, let alone XRP. I reported it to YouTube, and that person still has their money. And I think it's ridiculous that now, to some extent, YouTube's now allowing selective disinformation. That's called lying, by the way. All right, I just had to vent on that for a minute. So does XRP hinge on the success of Ripple's infrastructure? I mean, does it? If Ripple were to fail, XRP would still exist, but does XRP have a chance at going to 5 figures, 6 figures if Ripple doesn't do the things that they're doing? I would say it's a snowball's chance in hell of that happening. And again, you're talking to someone whose majority crypto holdings are XRP. I do want XRP to succeed. However, I can call a spade, even though it's inconvenient to hear. Now, I'm not some expert. I'm not a financial advisor, and you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just some guy on the internet, and I enjoy making videos. So, moving on on this article, it says, despite this, the report also calls to an important nuance. It claimed XRP doesn't provide formal investor protections typically associated with securities, such as enforceable rights or disclosures under SEC regulations. Now, in a way, I mean, if we're being big boys, we do want some form of disclosure. But if we were to find out at this juncture, imagine after all the speculation, if we found out how many partnerships Ripple had around the world, and contracts and things related, anything that is related to XRP as a crypto, not so much Ripple itself. Now, would you be able to see why the state of Oregon wants to betray the interest of the American people, XRP holders, and stop this from happening? Because I've been telling this to my father, that who also holds XRP, and I said, do you really think that the SEC and now the state of Oregon, do you really think that they're trying to hold this back because XRP's lifetime high will only be $5, $10, $100, $1,000? No. XRP is essentially going to be the new Bitcoin because it has far more uses in every single way. So there's no way that the state of Oregon would stop something like this or is trying to slow it down with bad news and FUD. You know what FUD stands for. They're not stopping this because they don't want XRP to go from $2.35, as of me recording this video, $2.35 to $8. Don't make me laugh. So, yeah. So let's just be honest. If I think that it's in our best interests for Ripple to keep prevent disclosure. It's in our best interest as XRP holders for Ripple to not disclose things in our investment strategy. But let's just keep it a buck. We ended up buying XRP because we're expecting it through some mystical force, not Ripple, we swear, for it, because I'm really tired of people denying this. For XRP to one day, overnight, in the blink of an eye, go from 234, flip the switch, and doesn't make any pit stops, which I do want it to do, and I wake up, it's $100,000. Yeah, like let's just be grown-ups here. It's in our best interest if Ripple keeps their partnerships and so on and so forth a secret, because they're global partnerships. They're trying to go global. They're not trying to. They are slowly going global. So Imagine the U.S. government, who hates their people. They hate the idea of regular Joe Schmoes getting rich, finding out that Ripple had, like, I'm making up numbers, had like 5,000 financial institutions from around the globe, and it's such a huge network that essentially the moment the switch is flipped, the U.S. Government would have a surge of retirees and not enough Gen Zers coming off of TikTok to take their place. And especially nowadays that Gen Z is one of the dumbest, generations on the planet. And Gen Alpha is, God have mercy. Lord help us when they turn 18. The generation that was born this year, God help us. Anyway, all right, let's move on. It says, this creates a paradox. While the economic relationship resembles an investment in Ripple, the legal structure avoids traditional oversight. XRP's utility differentiates it from normal bonds. Again, this is what I said towards the beginning of the video, that XRP is now, according to the law professor, functioning like a bond. Meanwhile, Ripple has long maintained that XRP is a functional token that, by the way, you control, used to facilitate cross-border payments, not an investment contract. Interestingly, the report acknowledged the strength of this argument. The paper credits Ripple for constructing a system where XRP serves an actual use case, fueling transactions within its payment ecosystem rather than merely existing as a speculative asset. It points out that XRP is essential to the system's operation, which users require to utilize the token to process transactions on the XRP ledger and as an optional bridge asset in Ripple payments. This utility-focused design supports Ripple's claim that the token is fundamentally different from a stock or bond. But, however, instead of selling stock in Ripple, Ripple sold XRP. That's not up for debate. They wanted to skirt around federal law. That's what they did. Even Annalisa Torres had said, hey, when you sell it to investors, because they see the connections in it. Now, perhaps the reason why Annalisa Torres judged things the way that she did, I think the reason is more likened to how a lot of power players are inside of Ripple as stakeholders. For example, I don't know if it's still true, but I heard the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is an investor in Ripple. So, in other words, if billionaire elitists are getting into to Ripple, and not so much XRP, the asset, but if Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is trying to own a chunk of that, then imagine the world finding out about power players having supported Ripple this entire time. Every Bitcoin maxi, every Ethereum maxi, I don't know if I've met any, I'm just saying, every person in Solana would be like, oh, this is some bull stuff. Pretty much the elites have already picked their winner, and I'm wasting my time holding the rest of this. It would be a house of cards that collapses the entire system. So everybody would just shove their money into XRP because there is no shares of Ripple that, because as far as I know, they didn't IPO yet. And essentially, they were trying to own a chunk of that network by buying XRP, of which there is plenty of it. So why don't we? So we do have to keep it a secret that Ripple has all these connections, and let it just be speculation. But they want to just put out drips and drabs of information in order to prevent people from finding out. So anyway, let's continue. The legal scholar also highlights the broader implications if Ripple's approach becomes widely adopted. According to the report, companies might tokenize segments of future cash flows and distribute them through crypto markets, potentially bypassing regulatory scrutiny. Now, let's stop there. A lot of things on blockchain, if blockchain equals digital, and digital equals traceable. So if something were to happen with my bank account today, and if I were a criminal, any forensic accountant could go through my bank account and see everything I've done, whether it's relevant to the case or not. So I don't think this really holds too much water. However, are they bypassing certain regulations? Yes, they are. And by the way, the reason why Ripple's able to bypass the regulations is because, drum roll please, Congress still has not passed any crypto-related bills that would essentially clarify what the rules are. So essentially, it's kind of like I'm 50-50 in agreement with this article, because I do have to call a spade a spade. However, when you think about it, if I'm distributing things through a back channel, you are trying to bypass it. It's like if you're trying to lower your electric bill, you can't bypass the grid. Well, what do you do to bypass? What do you do to try to lower your bill? You get green energy. You buy gasoline and you run a generator. You're bypassing the grid. And what XRP holders can do sometimes is we end up saying, no, this isn't bypassing the grid. Yes, it is. Like, grow up. Hey, grow up. Because remember, we're in crypto because we're trying to bypass slavery to banks for all eternity. If this plan doesn't work, a lot of us might as well, I'm not even going to finish that sentence because I don't want to get banned. But this is pretty much our last chance. It's too late to get rich from Bitcoin. It's too late to get rich from Ethereum. It's too late to get rich from Solana. It's too late to get rich from Dogecoin. The best time to buy for retail, especially with today's inflation, is when something is at or beneath a penny. Then you can scoop up tens of thousands of it, and then you hope for the best. All right. But yes, indeed, it is bypassing regulations because we're trying to bypass slavery, and we're trying to get out of slavery. And Elizabeth Warren, her puppets, and essentially, the state of Oregon, they're against people walking out of the workforce and flipping the middle finger, and they want the status quo. We want out. All right. Still, the report concedes that Ripple is one of the few crypto firms with a real revenue-generating business, which lends credibility to its model. See, at least they're acknowledging that instead of just lying to a judge and saying, there's nothing worthwhile here. At least they're acknowledging it. Ripple and SEC already looking to end the age-old lawsuit, so it really just is rehashing the same thing that almost every article does. And the final sentence here, which was what really made me make this video today, it says, the report from William Mary suggests that while the company may have skirted traditional frameworks, its operational transparency and real-world use case put it in a different category from purely speculative ventures. So they say it's not purely speculative, but then, so they say indirectly it's not purely speculative, but then they end by saying this is purely speculative. Like, really? So, I'm not a financial advisor. You guys know what to do. Please like and share, all that good stuff if you want to see more content. And I'm out.